All right, welcome. Hey, just another day of the Black Wealth Experience podcast, and so excited today. This is the first time that I've had a couple on the show, and I'm kind of excited about that because you get different perspectives from different people. As far as this, they sometimes say this is my house, and not even acknowledge that they have a partner or a spouse that's part of the process that makes it happen. And I also know there's always two points of views. When I think about my wife and us, and the last house that we bought, her viewpoint on the process was totally different than my viewpoint. Her belief system in the process was totally different than my belief system in the process. Although we came together and ended up, but it took my income plus her income to qualify. So it's just as much as both of our houses. And so I wanted to make sure that throughout this process, for those who are couples and are going through some of those things, that we kind of interact with that. Reminder that on June 19th is our, which is Juneteenth, which is our Black Housing Summit, Black Wealth Housing Summit. And it's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30. It's going to be at Cross Purpose, which is on the corner of Colorado Boulevard, Martin Luther King. There's a AME church on the corner, and it shares the parking lot with the AME church. So right on the back side of it, you'll see Cross Purpose there. We are going to go through, making sure that you have a real estate agent, making sure you have a loan officer, a credit repair person, insurance, financial advisor. We want to put a plan together for you so that you can enjoy the spoils, I guess, or what it means to be a homeowner. We understand that personal wealth and generational wealth starts with home ownership or property ownership. It is so important, just not only in just mindset, but on just ability to handle finances. I don't know if there is another vehicle, that you can, for the average person, because obviously there are outliers and things where you can make a whole lot of money really fast that, triple your money, quadruple your money. I guess if you're a professional gambler, that could happen where you make all this money really quick. But for the majority of us, the fastest way to wealth is going to be through our homes. And I've said this and will continue to say this: if you're spending $2,000 a month on an apartment, and you do that for 1 year, you spend $24,000. If you do that for 10 years, you have now spent $240,000 on rent to somebody else. So somebody else is collected. And so the couple that we're going to talk to today, the Shabazz today, they have a rental property. And I'm sure they would be happy to have you spend $2,000 a month in their place for the next 10 years, because that means it's pretty much paying off their place for them. But you as the homeowner don't get anything out of it. They're the ones who get stuff out of it. And so thinking about that process is whose mortgage are you paying? Are you paying yours, or are you paying somebody else's? As I go into these complexes and stuff, and I don't know where you guys have your rental at. Sometimes we'll see, some Land Rovers or some Mercedes or some BMWs or some Jaguars or, these $80,000 cars. And I continue to ask, because I have to when somebody gets out of the car, like, and I'm a lender, so I want to know if I can get them in the process. Have you ever thought about buying a house? And many of the times they say, I didn't think I could. I don't have enough money for a down payment. My down payment for the car isn't near as much as it's going to be for a house, because they have this mindset of, this is going to cost me $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to be able to get into a house. And since I can't have a house, I still might as well enjoy life. And I'm not saying, believe me, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the cars. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, having several of those cars. I'm just saying that if we put our priorities where one is going to create value for you or increase and create equity, where the other one is not. All right, so we have the Shabazes here today, and I'm going to have them talk about their story. They are homeowners. They are even in the process of thinking, hey, you know what? This might not be the greatest place that I want to live the rest of my life, and thinking about moving to another state. But in the process, they have options that people who are renting don't. It might take a little bit longer because they have to sell their property, or they have to decide that they're going to rent it out or what. But at the same time, they have an option where they'll be able to hopefully pull some money out in the equity that they've gained and use that to buy something else in another place. So welcome to the show. I am so glad that you guys are willing to be on here. You're willing to be as a couple. I don't know who wants to start, but maybe if you can just tell us a little bit about your journey and yourself, you maybe like where you grew up and your kind of your mindset on housing. Because I right now I know we haven't had that conversation yet, so I'm excited to know as well. So who would like to start?
You can start.
Okay.
Thank you for having us. For me, it's I'm from Montbello. I grew up, born and raised in the Montbello area, and that's the far northeast side of Denver. And I actually seen home ownership, but one home that was owned my entire life. So I think that for me, it wasn't a big deal. Like it didn't really click to me because it wasn't my immediate family. It was, like my uncle who, married into the family. But anyone in my actual immediate family, they actually never were owners.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So for me, it was something that was kind of far-fetched. At least as a kid, I never thought that it was a big deal. I thought that was the way things were supposed to be, right? Like I have some people who live in apartments and some people who live in townhomes or whatever the case may be. And I just thought that was the way it went. Like I had no idea that people could own a home and possibly, profit off of it in the future or anything like that.
So did you stay were you in the same house the whole time from elementary through high school, or did you move around a little bit?
So my story is a little bit different. So I was on Section 8. We were on welfare when I was a kid, and then when my grandmother passed is when I moved with my aunt and my uncle.
Okay.
And I was in that house all the way up until I graduated high school.
Okay. So was that like junior high and high school together? Is that when you were when your grandma passed? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And the only reason I ask that is because there's something about stability. When I was working in homeless services and I was looking at and kind of, I'm getting my PhD, so I do research and thinking about the research and the folks that almost I would say over 95% of the folks experiencing homelessness did not have a stable environment during their childhood. They went to 5 or 6 schools. They moved from community to community. They didn't experience what we know as a community and that stuff. And so, you were very fortunate. I mean, obviously, having your grandma pass is, unfortunate, and having to move in with your aunt and your uncle. But the stability of having the same friends in junior high as you had in high school, at least the core group, because I'm sure there were several families that you knew in 7th and 8th grade that disappeared and you never saw them again. Or somebody who showed up your senior year that had been to maybe 2 or 3 schools. And there's something about that stability of having a community that can help you. So that part was really good. But at the same time, you think, okay, Section 8 growing up, there's not even a whole bunch of examples other than one person in your family that actually took you in. So that's a really good to know for the background of some of the folks that are here. All right, so let's to the next person and hear your story here. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was born in Maryland, but grew up here. I think we moved here when I was about 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, grew up with both of my parents. They rented, which it's actually really funny. So they rented a lot of different kind of like townhome situations. The longest home that I stayed in was actually owned by my grandparents. So they owned a triplex in Aurora, Colorado. And they have since passed it on to my uncle, and they were homeowners themselves, but my parents always rented until middle school. And that's when we moved out to Green Valley Ranch, and my parents still have that home. So kind of partially renting, kind of seeing like some evictions. We lived with my grandparents for a little while, so it was pretty unstable until about middle school when my parents were able to buy their first home, and their only home, like Eben said, so they never bought multiple until just recently. Kind of seeing, I think my mom was inspired by us of having more than one home and being able to make income off of that. So
okay, nice. That is awesome. Okay, so now we fast forward to, our childhoods. Now, did you whether you went to college or school or whatever, at some point you decided the first home you guys bought together, I'm assuming that you guys bought together. So you get married and you're deciding that you're going to want to buy a home. What was the inspiration, or what were your thought processes? Hey, we have this option. We can rent or continue renting, or we can buy a home. What kind of spurred on that thought process that home ownership is possible?
So I knew it was possible. Didn't know how, didn't have a clue how we were going to make it happen. Funds were not the greatest at the time. Income wasn't the greatest. So, I think we both thought that, hey, you can't get a home unless you have all of this money. You have all this money saved. You have to put all this money down. I think that I speak for a lot of Black people from my community who were probably afraid of owning a home because we were always told that it was almost impossible for us to do. But I think for us, we used to do what we call dreaming, and we would go literally hang out in model homes. So we would just, pretend like, one day we're going to have a house. So we would go look at model homes and areas that we wanted to live in, and just, kind of dream and just have some fun, imagine ourselves in those homes. And I think one day the rent where we were staying at, we got a notice that mid-year that the rent was going to increase by, I want to say it was close to $400.
Oh, wow. Okay.
At this specific, complex that we were living in. That wasn't normal. You would think, $20, $40, something like that. And when it jumped up to $400 and they gave us the option, to renew the lease, do a month to month, or, you can move out. And sure enough, we were fortunate enough to be able to, save up some money, do a month to month. And then we went under the process of trying to find a home. So.
Perfect. So one of the things that you said in there is people were telling you that you probably couldn't own a home. The people who were telling you, were they homeowners or people who weren't homeowners that were telling you what you couldn't do?
They were not homeowners.
Isn't that amazing? Like our friends that don't know anything, have never done it, are telling you can't do it. And it's not because they haven't tried. And that's part of our community, and some of the detriment of our community is, we tell each other what we think or we believe without the actual experience of having it done. Because I'm thinking through now that you got a couple houses. I would doubt that you're telling people they can't do it.
Right. Not at all. Not at all.
Hey, by the way, don't even try. Just keep renting. You'll never be able to do it. It costs too much money. And there's that myth of the 20% down, where you have to have, somehow in our culture, in our communities, we believe that in order to purchase a house, we have to have 20% down. So we see, a $400,000 house and go, okay, so 10% of 400,000 is 40,000. So 20% is 80,000. I guess I'm never buying a house, because there's no way I'm ever saving up $80,000 to buy a $400,000 house.
Yeah.
Or $40,000 even buy a $200,000 house that we can't find. So we just kind of say, forget it. I'm just going to go buy a car. Were you guys in that situation where you had 20% down? Were you, when you were ready to buy your house, that you had all the money you needed? Or was it something that you went to a different program that didn't require 20% down?
I think we did our best. We didn't have 20% for sure. We both are in education, so it's pretty hard to save, that much money. Did a decent job, and just doing odd jobs here and there to make sure we save some money. But we definitely were hearing, the snippets about programs where you didn't have to have that much capital down, and I think that's what really got us going. Like, hey, if this is something that's being offered, then we need to take advantage of it. And that's what we did. So we had some money saved, and then obviously we took advantage of a first time home buyers program. So,
which is, and that's why they're there, right? They're there to help people get in. So that, I think that's how almost everybody should get into a program. Even if you had the 20% down, sometimes I think, well, maybe the cash could be used somewhere else for another property if you don't have to, and you're not doing it. There's just so many ways to think about it these days, that there are these programs that are available, even, some grant programs where you don't even have to pay any money back. So from the missus here, what in the process, you guys decide, okay, we want to buy a house. What are you thinking through this process? Are you believing it's going to happen, or are you just like, we'll see, I'll try it? What kind of went through your mind during this, I don't know, month or 2 months, or, through this process of, I think we're going to do it, but can we really? Yeah.
Yeah. Like Ibn said, like we've always been dreamers. We've always had the goal of owning our home. But there was definitely doubt and definitely fear. My parents bought their home shortly before like the crash of 08. And so there was a lot of fear of like balloon loans and things like that were always kind of fed to me, where my parents were like, just make sure you don't get this type of loan, which like learning about the home buying process, it just depends on what works best for you. If you're planning on staying in that home forever, there's a lot of factors that go into choosing those type of loans. But I think everybody was just unaware of those type of loans at the time, and that crash was just really detrimental for a lot of Black families who were able to get their first home off of those type of loans, right? So those fears were really fed into me. And so I definitely needed to learn about buying a home and what it took to buy a home. Like Evan said, we're educators, and so we're not rolling in dough. So that's also scary. Just looking at the cost of homes and how much they cost compared to when our relatives bought and things like that. Those numbers can be scary. And I think we were blessed to get into our first home at the time of COVID, or like right before COVID hit. And it just kind of really worked out for us. Those home prices were just where they needed to be for us to be able to buy our first home.
So you get into your first home and you get through the process and you walk in and go, this is mine. Excited about this is mine. How long were you in that place before you were thinking, hey, we did this once, we can do this again? What was that process like?
Weeks.
So that didn't take long at all, mainly because I don't sit on my hands very long with almost anything. And like you said, just a little while ago, we actually were fortunate enough to, all the money that we had saved, we actually didn't touch a dime of it. In fact, we actually ended up getting money back when we closed on our first house, which was, to what I know now, is not always normal. So we got money back. So, now we have some money that we saved that we intended to buy a house with, and didn't have to necessarily spend that immediately. So for us, it didn't take long at all. And I was like, okay, the way the market is moving and, we still have some money that we're sitting on, I think that we could do something that our parents have never done. And I think it was maybe a year when we were like, hey, I think we should move. We should. And then when we do move, we should see if we should keep this, see if we can't keep this property and, try to keep it around.
So you guys went to a new build, right? To a community that had a new build.
Yeah.
And so that whole process of having to wait for it to be built and all that kind of stuff. And you're thinking, so we got our place now. We think we might be able to rent it. We have some money because we didn't spend all our money, on that first one.
Yeah.
What was that? I mean, thinking about a new build and a new house and a whole family, and is this possible? Because you told us earlier in the story that you guys went and sat in a whole bunch of like model homes and dream homes and that kind of stuff. So you saw all these different things. Was there an excitement about, hey, we're going to have one of these? We're going to be the only people who ever lived here. What was that thought process like? With the new build.
Yeah, I mean, so we just kind of kept up with the tradition, right, of just going and seeing model homes. And even just kind of got the itch. He's like, I'm gonna just ask. I'm gonna just see. Like, there's no harm in asking of like if we would qualify for these type of homes, and he did, and we were able to. It was definitely exciting with the new build because our first home was older. I think it was older than the both of us, and so we did have to put a lot of work into that. And so not having to worry about things for a little while with a new build was definitely exciting. And then the process of getting to pick out everything, you know, like we get to pick the colors that we want. We get to pick our cabinets and our floors and things like that, and things that we've learned that we like in a home. We were able to choose those things, and so that's really fun.
Yeah, that's kind of exciting. Like, you go to the store of what my house is going to look like before you ever see it, and kind of dream of what that finished product is like. So on the first home, you decide that you're going to rent it out, and so that means you're not. You know, a lot of folks, what they'll do is they stair step. So they'll be in the first home, and then they will sell that house because that creates that down payment or that 20 or whatever % down for the upgraded home, and then they stay there a little bit while, and then they use that money to go up to the next house and to, something that's bigger and better. You guys decided to keep it. So just curious, on the 20%, were you able to find another program on the second one that didn't require 20% down so that you could, even on the second home that you were buying, be able to keep the first one?
Yes and no. And the only reason why I say no is because we were buying the first home allowed me to really develop my business, and I wouldn't have been able to do that in an apartment. So buying the first home allowed me to make a couple extra bucks and put some more funds away, and obviously my income went up a little bit, so obviously that helps when you're trying to go buy a new home. But we had to refinance. We refinanced the home, and like my wife said, at the time, it was still, the pandemic was still pretty heavy. So we were able to take advantage of that. And we refinanced into a conventional loan. And originally we had, like I said, the FHA with the first time home buyers program. And a lot of people don't know that you can actually get another FHA loan. You just can't have multiple out at the same time. And or depending on if it's going to be an investment property or your primary, whatever. And those things you can get into later. And obviously I'm doing now through my classes. I'm learning a lot more about it. But so we refinanced it, and it actually ended up being a better deal for us. So we refinanced, and we were able to get yet another FHA loan. And then come to find out, we didn't have to even get another FHA loan. We were able to just qualify for a conventional with the income that we were going to receive from the rental property. And the new income that we had as a family.
Cool. So I love the fact that you were able to utilize the home without having to sell it, but some of the equity in that home to help you get the next mortgage.
Yeah,
so that's amazing. So now you're using what they call OPM, other people's money, right? To be able to finance your lifestyles, which is really cool. I mean, that's I guess the American dream or the American way. So now you have this decision. We're going to move into this world of being a landlord. And instead of just having to take care of our own house, we have to be that person. Like, if the water heater goes out, that we have to be able to fix the water heater at the house. What kind of went through your minds in the decision and trying to figure out what price point and that kind of stuff to become landlords, so that you're not just breaking even, but you're actually creating some type of an income? What did that look like?
I think once we refinanced, and when we refinanced, it was such a big difference in savings on the mortgage on a monthly basis. It almost made no sense not to rent it out because a lot of people probably don't realize, but once we refinanced, the mortgage was cheaper for that home than it was for us to rent our apartment that we used to live in years prior.
Wow.
So go ahead.
No, I just said that's really cool.
Yeah. So when we seen that it was that, it went down that much, we just felt silly. Like, we have to try to capitalize off of this, and at the same time we could possibly bless some family that needs this house, because we want to try to hold on to something and build. It's a cliche now. People use it and it's a buzzword, but generational wealth. And that's what we wanted to start doing. And without even knowing how to do it, we just had an idea. And that's where we are now. So we do have a tenant in that specific property, and all is well. Yeah,
that is so cool. So now, so you have a rental property, you have the property that you're living in, and there's a possibility of moving. You're still dreaming, you're still growing, and you came to me and said, hey, we're thinking about moving out of state. And so I just, when you think about that, you're saying, are you thinking even a little bit that you're going to go move out of state and rent somewhere? Or are you thinking, no, we're just going to go buy another piece of property? What's the thought process in your mind now?
Everything. I mean, you can go ahead.
It's definitely, we can buy. We've done it a couple of times, and now we're more comfortable in taking that bigger leap out of state, right? Because we don't know everything going on there. We just know we want change, and we know that we've bought homes twice now, and so there's nothing holding us back. And like you said in the beginning, we have options, right? Like we have assets under us that can help us in our next dream, in our next adventure.
Gotcha. And so, I mean, is the process thinking, we're going to see what we can do and maybe continue to be another landlord, or is it thinking, we got to sell, or you don't know yet if that's what you want to do because you have those options?
There's a lot. We think we've come to an agreement over the past week or so, actually, about what we're going to do, and we'll more than likely keep our home. We'll keep our home that we're in now, and we'll sell the other home for sure. The equity grew pretty decent in the area right after COVID. That bubble kind of popped and everything started to go back up, and it pretty fast, actually. So we definitely want to take advantage of the equity that was built in that home, sell it and use that cash flow for the move. And then we're going to keep the home that we're currently in, and we're actually not going to do a normal rent. We're going to lean towards the Airbnb and furnished finding. We're going to lean towards that just because of the area we're in. It's a pretty hot area for Airbnbs and nurses and pilots. So we think, we're still doing some research, but we think that it'll be, a good situation for us. So,
yeah, I think it's when you think that's regular, well, if you live close to the airport, which I know that house is closer to the airport, it gives so much when people coming into Denver, and you think of I don't remember what it was that I was watching on the Super Bowl in Phoenix that was there last year, and an Airbnb that this is obviously high end, but Beyonce is renting for $80,000 a night. And you go, how is that possible? And it wasn't, it was like a 6,000 square foot house. It wasn't like this mansion that was over, it was a nice house, but for that kind of money and being able to do that. But what a great option to be able to have. Because in your apartment, there's no way you can rent an apartment out to somebody, right? And an Airbnb or do something.
Right. Not legally.
So what in your mind, and I'm kind of going back a little bit, and this will probably be one of the last questions that I'm asking is, what is the difference in both of your mindsets? And it doesn't matter who goes first, in your mindsets from the time before you owned a home to the time after you owned a home, about just money and wealth and that kind of stuff. What kind of triggered, or what has happened in your belief system or your mindset between those two periods of time?
I would say, you mentioned earlier, when you're renting, you're paying someone else's mortgage, right? And when you have your own, you have all these other opportunities and all these other things that you can do with your money. So that has definitely changed for me. Seeing that that's true, and thinking about how much we were spending on rent for a 3-bedroom apartment was insane. And this is 5-6 years later. I'm still not paying that in my mortgage. You know what I'm saying? And so that seeing those numbers is crazy. It's definitely mind blowing, like eye opening. Your dollar goes so much further when you own your home.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, before everyone goes, just thinking what you just said is so powerful. 5 years later, we're paying less than we were paying in an apartment.
Yeah.
If you were to add up how much you would have paid in that apartment over the last 5 years had you stayed there.
Yeah.
People come to me and talk about, rate and that kind of stuff all the time. And, I'll wait 2 years if the rate's going to, the rate is, what is that now? Say you're at 7% right now. Well, I want to wait a couple years till it goes back down to 5 or 4. How much are they losing in 2 years? If it's there, with your story is 5 years later, we not only do we have income coming from a property, but we're paying less than we paid when we were paying rent. That's huge. Even go ahead and share your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, and it's important that you work with people and a lender and your realtor, but man, more importantly, your lender, that you're working with somebody who, can tell you the ins and outs of it all. Because I think when we first bought our first home, we were, like most people who've never bought a home, we were worried about the interest rate, right? And you compare this to like a vehicle or something like that. That's the only type of interest or bill that you owe. That's the only type of interest that you know about. So we were terrified of that interest rate, and not knowing that in all reality, the interest rate is not that huge of a deal depending on your goal. Depending on what your goal is, the interest rate is not a problem, simply because you're going to have leverage. And depending on, you take care of that property, or it appreciates, or whatever the case may be, or if you want to sell it later on, they say average the value of the home goes up by 3%. So if you're doing the math, either way, you're never going to lose. Especially now, right? It's not, we're not in a time where things are breaking very easily. We're not in a time where the homes are ridiculously cheap or small. Like, there's a process put into them. So nonetheless, that was something that used to scare us. But I think for me, I teach financial literacy and stuff like that. And one of the things I talk about is a home loan. And when you're talking to a bunch of 11 and 12, 13-year-olds about loans, they're like, what? And then when I show them what appreciation is, and I show them what equity is, and I'm doing it at the same time, that definitely changed my mindset. And like my wife said, we're in a space now where it's we've never been in our life financially, because we can say, you know what, let's just go do this. And that would have never been the conversation 5 years ago, 6 years ago. That would have never came out of our mouth. It would have been a terror. It would have been a horror story to think about trying to purchase a home, trying to leave state, trying to, just increase and change our lifestyle. That would have been something that we would have never even thought of. And now we have, the ability to kind of have some freedom to go dream some more again. It doesn't really stop.
Yeah, when we talk about options, and this is super important to think about. When we talk about, we're not just talking about financial options. Like, you have the option to buy this size of a house or this size of house, or be able to expand your stuff, material things. It really comes down as you have options now because of this homeownership process. And what you just alluded to is we even have options to wait if we need to figure things out, because there's some money that's coming in from one place, or we have the ability to take cash out somewhere else. We have options where our kids want to go to school, what neighborhoods we want to live in. We have options of, all these options that aren't, these physical material things that you have to do, but they're literally just thought processes options where you can just sit back and have time to figure things out and plan. Because when you're living that paycheck to paycheck and you're in that apartment and you're giving out, you don't have time to think. All you have really time to do is go to work and come home.
Yeah, well, you're surviving.
Yeah, you're surviving.
Yeah.
Especially when you're educators. I mean, I was an educator too, so I get it, because you get that paycheck once a month. At least that's what it was when I was at public school. And you're going, I'm worried about can I get enough groceries for the end of the month? I'm not thinking about, like you said, survival, where you're doing that. And so those options become so important. That what homeownership leads you to have, because it's probably the first key, like stepping stone to personal wealth. The first stepping stone to generational wealth, because of some of the things that it allows you to do. The stability. You guys have children, and and thinking about, all right, when I go buy my next house, or your children are a big part of the decision of where you want them to grow up, correct? That's a big part of it. And so, but when you're in an apartment, that I don't think, I guess it can be, and you're thinking, I want to live in the apartment that's by this school, but you're also thinking, will they be able to stay in this school, right?
And you take what you can get, right? Like, it's not, those options aren't always available. And unfortunately, being educators, we see that happen with some of our students, right? So we have kids who come from certain environments or who live in certain areas, and it's not their fault, right? Like, they don't have the means, or they're not even in the specific area. I know kids who bus quite a ways just to get to school, but mom works a double shift, so if you don't live near the school, you're busing to school. By the time you get home, mom just took off, so you're taking care of baby brother now. You don't have time for homework. So there's so many factors that go into, the kids' upbringing too, which is, I think, is probably the biggest upside for us right now, to be thinking about our kid. I think my daughter and her education and her sports, because she's pretty heavy into sports right now, and she's pretty good. And that has been probably the driving force for us. And again, we would have never been able to have that conversation, whether she was good or not, about where she's going to go to school at, what area we would live in. And it's cool that she gets to have a part of that. And it feels good.
Wow. Well, and we're running out of time. I'm going to have you guys back on at some point. Especially after your move, and we want to kind of follow that journey. But here's why it's so inspirational to me. And, this is something that Art Williams told me yesterday, a statistic that he said, 8 out of 10 people do what they see. 2 out of 10 people do what they hear. And I think about you being in education and the people that you're impacting, because you're teaching those kids about amortization and about, how money works. And they still have to go home, and hopefully they go home and they ask questions, and, maybe they can't do anything about it right now, but they've now seen somebody that is in their lives that has done it, that has working through it. And I think we got to talk about it more, because sometimes, finances is something we don't talk about in schools, or we don't talk about to people, but I think that's part of the conversation that we need to have. But not only are the kids seeing and hearing what you're saying, and this is for both of you, the parents are seeing it as well. They they come and they whatever jobs that they have, and they're dropping their kids off or picking their kids up. And if you're having those conversations, or even it's an off conversation, you're talking about a house or moving or doing that kind of stuff, in those conversations, they get to see it, not just hear it. It's not something you're just saying, but it's something that they see. So thank you for being on. Both of you got the chance for one last thought that you would want to tell anybody who's thinking about buying a house, what they should do, not do. Give us maybe 1 minute each of what you guys think should happen, and then we'll come back at another time and finish this conversation.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I would say do it.
Okay.
We started small, and I've had a conversation with my cousin recently, where she was just like teach me. I want to be like you guys. I would say start small. Like, even if it's a condo, you start there. That's going to build. Anything that's going to build is great, and it's going to benefit you, so that you can use it as a stepping stone to get to your dream home. So yeah, do it. And then what I was just thinking about was, when we were renting, we were always worried about the rent increasing. It never decreased for us. But owning a home, we've been able to refinance, and and make lower payments and grow our wealth. So it's definitely been life-changing, and it's definitely worth investing in.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ibn?
I think for me, I would say I would mirror my wife. 100% do it, and don't let what anybody else has told you deter you. I feel like buying a house is kind of like marriage. What it is for me is not going to be what it is for you, but you won't know until you do it. And so you got to go for it and do your best to just take care of your credit. And the rest is history. There are so many programs out there for you, right? There are so many people out there that actually do good work and they actually want to help you. So good credit, bad credit. Like, there are people who can help you, show you what to do, and get the help if you need it. If not, go for it. If you're afraid, shoot your shot. You got to go for it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for being on. Thank you for joining us in another episode of the Black Wealth Experience. And to end this, you can do this. You deserve this.
Absolutely.
And let us help you. And so you guys have a great rest of your day. Have an awesome, awestruck, incredible day. And we will look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning into our podcast today. It has been a fantastic opportunity for us to show you exactly what we're trying to do in the community. And that is to help people to make sure that they have the ability to realize home ownership. And so my name is Brian Arnold. I am a lender. I'm with City First Financial. And so if you have questions, I'm not doing this podcast so that we can, rush all the business over to City First Financial. I'm doing this podcast so that we can make sure that you are taken care of, that you have a real estate agent, that you have a loan officer, that you have a credit repair person, that you have an insurance person, that you have a financial advisor, all working with you towards making your home ownership realization happen. We're also going to be talking about, wealth generation and what it means to pass on to the next generation. I do trust and wills and making sure that the money that you've accumulated during your lifetime actually passes on to the next generation without going through a thing called probate. And so we want to make sure that we have some unique different things that we may have talked about on this thing that can help you think about what that's going to look like. So thank you again for communicating. Go ahead and subscribe to these YouTube channels, whether it's on YouTube that you're watching the video, or if you are just listening to this on a podcast, that you are subscribing to the podcast, because we are going to have some amazing guests that are coming on and some amazing content. So thank you for the blackwealthexperience.org and getting on that and just coming in and listening to us and then taking advantage of the resources that we're hopefully and education that we're hopefully giving to you. So you have a wonderful, awesome, incredible, awestruck day. You are God's greatest gift, and I want to make sure that you know that. Talk with you guys soon.